The Red Sea, silent, dark, and restless. Every night, thousands of cargo ships move across its waters, and somewhere high above, American fighter jets slice through the sky like shadows. It's routine. It's constant. It's power on display. But one night, something happened that no one expected. A single flash on a radar screen turned that calm routine into chaos. A missile had been launched, and its target was a U.S. fighter jet. The world didn't hear it right away. The event unfolded in the middle of nowhere, over open waters. But for those who were there, the pilots, the radar operators, the commanders, it was a moment they would never forget. It began as any ordinary patrol night. The jet was cruising at more than 30,000 feet, its engines humming steady, its sensors scanning every inch of the sea below. And then, a sudden warning screamed inside the cockpit. A missile lock. The pilot's instincts took over instantly. He pulled the jet into a hard dive, dropping altitude and firing countermeasures. Dozens of flares burst from the tail, lighting up the dark sky like fireworks. The missile, still locked, closed the distance in seconds, but then swerved off course, blinded by the heat of the decoy flares. It missed by just a few hundred feet. The pilot steadied his breathing, checked his instruments, and realized what had just happened. Someone had tried to bring down an American fighter jet. Within minutes, the message reached the fleet command ship below. The radar data was recorded, the missile's trajectory traced. It came from the Yemeni coast, territory controlled by the Houthi rebels. The question wasn't just who fired it, but how. Because this wasn't a homemade rocket or a random shot into the sky. This was a guided surface-to-air missile, precise, fast, and dangerous. Across the Pentagon, lights flickered on through the night. The Situation Room buzzed with analysts trying to piece together what had happened. Intelligence reports from the region had already warned of new missile systems being smuggled into Yemen. Now, those warnings were real. The Houthis had apparently crossed a line. They had targeted an American warplane, and nearly succeeded. Experts examined the data. The missile appeared to be a modified system, one capable of tracking targets high above the clouds. It was not something rebels could easily build on their own. Someone had supplied it, trained them, and guided the operation. It wasn't just a strike. It was a message to Washington: we can reach you now. For years, the Red Sea had been a chessboard. On one side, Western fleets protecting trade routes and global shipping. On the other, regional militias testing how far they could go. The Houthis had attacked oil tankers, launched drones, and hijacked vessels, but an attempt on a fighter jet changed the game completely. The U.S. Navy immediately raised alert levels. Carriers repositioned. Satellite coverage intensified. The rules of engagement were rewritten overnight. The next morning, a U.S. intelligence satellite caught high-resolution images of a scorched launch pad hidden in the Yemeni hills. Tire tracks led to a tunnel entrance carved into the rocks, a base built for concealment. Orders came swiftly. Within hours, Tomahawk cruise missiles streaked through the night sky, guided by GPS coordinates. Explosions lit up the horizon. When the smoke cleared, the entire launch site was gone. The Pentagon didn't issue a public statement, but insiders knew what had happened. It was retaliation, measured, precise, and silent. A warning disguised as a routine strike. Those who had ordered the attack on the U.S. jet were no longer in control of their launchers. But beneath the surface, the story wasn't over. Intelligence intercepted new chatter. More missiles were being moved across the desert. Some unassembled, others waiting for parts. It became clear, the rebels weren't giving up. In fact, the failed attack had made them bolder. Propaganda videos began circulating online showing masked fighters loading rockets, vowing revenge. They called it, "The Night We Scared America." Inside Washington, analysts debated the true scale of the threat. How many of these missiles existed? Who trained them to use such systems? Some pointed fingers at foreign suppliers. Others said the Houthis had become more technically capable on their own. Either way, the message to the pilots flying over the Red Sea was simple: every takeoff could be your last. For the men in those jets, every mission started the same way: a pre-flight briefing, coordinates, radio checks. But lately, every pilot added a small, silent ritual: a brief pause before takeoff, a look into the dark sea, a thought of home. Because they all knew what waited out there. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a radar might already be scanning for them. One U.S. pilot later described the moment in his debrief: "You can't see the missile. You just hear the tone. It's like death calling your name. He wasn't exaggerating. The radar lock alert is a high-pitched, continuous tone, the sound every pilot fears. And on that February night, it nearly became the last sound one of them ever heard. As footage of the incident quietly circulated among military circles, the mood shifted. The Red Sea wasn't just another patrol zone anymore, it was a live battlefield. The Navy began escorting commercial ships more aggressively. Jets flew in pairs instead of solo. Every radar contact was treated as potential hostile activity. Meanwhile, in Yemen, Houthi commanders celebrated their near hit as a symbolic victory. They had proven they could reach the Americans. For them, that single missile, even though it missed, was worth its weight in gold. It became a rallying cry. Recruitment surged. Fighters joined, believing they had challenged the world's strongest military and lived to tell the tale. But they didn't realize what was coming next. In the days following the incident, U.S. surveillance drones mapped every potential launch site along the coast. Hidden bunkers, tunnels, storage caves, all marked. And one by one, those coordinates were added to a strike list. A week later, under a moonless sky, the U.S. Navy launched a coordinated strike. Precision bombs fell in waves, flattening radar systems, missile crates, and training facilities. When morning came, smoke covered the coastline for miles. Officially, nothing was said. But local witnesses described the night as a storm from the sea. Within hours, rebel radio channels went silent. The attempted attack had cost them more than they had imagined. Still, the incident changed the region forever. Military experts around the world began warning that the Red Sea was becoming one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth. A single mistake, a misfire, a wrong target, could trigger a global crisis. Every nation with ships in those waters started preparing contingency plans. Months later, as tensions cooled on the surface, American pilots returned to routine patrols. But this time, they flew differently. Their eyes stayed locked on the radar screens, every flicker of light sending a jolt through their nerves. One pilot said later, "You don't think about politics up there. You just think about survival." On the ground, U.S. intelligence continued to monitor movements in Yemen. The rebels had lost much of their heavy equipment, but not their will. They rebuilt, adapted, and kept threatening new strikes. Each time, the U.S. responded from afar: drones, missiles, electronic jamming. It was a Cold War in a hot place. By the end of that year, the skies over the Red Sea had turned eerily quiet. But everyone knew that quiet didn't mean peace, it meant tension. Like the calm before another storm. The lesson was clear. The Houthis had tried to hit an American fighter jet, and it had been a big mistake. Not just because they failed, but because it exposed them, invited retaliation, and reminded the world that every action in this region has a consequence. Today, the Red Sea remains one of the most watched zones on the planet. Satellites orbit above, ships patrol below, and in between, the pilots who once faced that missile still fly the same route, their engines echoing through the darkness. They know what happened. They know how close it came. And every time the radar pings, every time a flare bursts behind them, they remember that night, the night a single missile tried to rewrite the balance of power, and failed.